most parents that if you have a child with any sort of learning disability, especially if they have an IEP, the state gives a couple of really great programs for kids on the spectrum or kids with disabilities. One is called the IEA program. That's the Individual Education Account. And that one helps with strictly just school tuition. So everything that we've been given from that account helps towards his tuition at the private school of our choice. We found a great private school that he is now thriving at. He's been at for the last couple of years. Another program that we're able to take advantage of is called the Katie Beckett program. And that one allows us to also utilize those funds for private education, but it also helps with a lot of the therapies that he has and things that our healthcare just doesn't cover for him.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. So we've talked a lot about education on this podcast, whether it's with someone who started a school or a parent who needed a different option for their child. The truth is that, not every family can afford the best learning environment for their kid. That's where school choice or education freedom comes in. And thankfully, more states are stepping up to make it more affordable for families. And Tennessee is one of the latest states to expand education freedom this year. Families are excited to finally have access to this new program. And today we have two guests on to talk about this. The first is Americans for Prosperity's Tennessee State Director, Tori Venable. And our second guest is a parent who plans to use the new program, Drew Middletown. So Tori, Drew, welcome.
Thanks, David, for having us.
Thanks for being here.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited for this discussion. We talk a lot, like I said, about education freedom on the show. It's a real passion of mine. So I always get a little extra amped up when we have a chance to talk about this. So Tori, you've been fighting for school choice for over a decade. I mean, you probably started when you were 16. So I wanted to know, how have you been, what have you been working on, and why have you been working on it? Why is the issue so important to you?
Well, I started back when my daughter was still in school, and I wanted her to have better educational opportunities. And, I've been with Americans for Prosperity since our chapter launched back in 2013. In 2015, we got our first win for a special needs scholarship, and we were plugging away little by little, trying to add to the number of families that had more access. And this year, we finally crossed a major milestone with passing the Universal School Choice Bill, which is Education Freedom Accounts. And 20,000 scholarships are now going to be available across the state of Tennessee, but it is going to be universally accessible.
That's right. And that's a real key. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the legislation and, what do you think it'll do and how it'll evolve?
So, as I said, 20,000 scholarships. The first 10,000 are prioritized to lower income students at 300% of the federal poverty level. In Tennessee, that's 153,000. So that's already most of Tennessee are eligible there. And the next 20,000 are available to any student. And so, $7,075 for each individual student to attend a private school of their parents' choice. It applies directly towards tuition. We have worked on this. We passed a failing schools bill back in 2019 that only addressed school choice for the kids that were stuck in the worst failing schools in our state, the bottom 10%. We've been able to expand that out bit by bit, but now we are finally at a place where the entire state of Tennessee is going to have access, and we're going to we're going to see more of these micro schools launch that are going to provide real opportunity across the state.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. I'm really excited for the kids and the families of Tennessee, but I know that you and your team are working hard on this with a lot of allies for years. So I'm really excited that it's come to fruition after a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Hey, Drew, so tell us about, I believe you have two kids and what their kind of education journey's been like.
Yeah, so I have two kids. My boy is 12 years old, Caden, and my daughter Sage is 10 years old. So I'll start with my son, Caden, because he came first, obviously. But at 5 years old, he got diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And as first-time parents with him, we weren't quite sure what to do with that besides just get him into therapies. And at the time, Tennessee didn't really offer any sort of, coverage for healthcare or anything like that for therapies and things that he needed to really succeed and grow with some of those disabilities that he has. He's a little more high functioning, but he does really well. He's in a normal class with normal kids. But we started to obviously try to find ways to pay for those therapies, and it was a lot of money at first, but we did what we could at the time. Fast forward over a few years through his elementary education journey, we started to notice this trend where his teachers would pass him with A, B's, and C's in his grades and go on to the next grade, but his standardized tests with the TCAP testing always came back below average. So that kind of left us really disheartened at the public education system with where we're zoned in Tennessee. And when it came time to look at middle school options, obviously we wanted to look at what we were zoned for. And unfortunately, a lot of the local schools that we were zoned for just did not meet our expectations of what he needed to really excel with some of his disabilities. And he was given an IEP, which was helpful, but it was still kind of a struggle to find a good school. And then we had to kind of find ways to discover, okay, what other options do we have? There's magnet schools, there's charter schools. And unfortunately, one of the local magnet schools couldn't accept him because of his low standardized test scores. So again, we were kind of struggling with trying to figure out what to do with him until we kind of learned through some state-funded programs that we are now utilizing to help him. And we found a great private school for him to go to. And my daughter, Sage, is now at the same public school that my son was at. But we're trying to figure out, okay, what is she going to do when she reaches middle school age? So those are kind of some of the questions that we're wrestling right now.
What was the program that you all found for your son? And is it available to everyone, or was there some specific parts to it?
Yeah, so most parents that if you have a child with any sort of learning disability, especially if they have an IEP, the state gives a couple of really great programs for kids on the spectrum or kids with disabilities. One is called the IEA program. That's the Individual Education Account. And that one helps with strictly just school tuition. So everything that we've been given from that account helps towards his tuition at the private school of our choice. We found a great private school that he is now thriving at. He's been at for the last couple of years. Another program that we're able to take advantage of is called the Katie Beckett program. And that one allows us to also utilize those funds for private education, but it also helps with a lot of the therapies that he has and things that our healthcare just doesn't cover for him. So we utilize both of those programs, and so far it's been really wonderful.
Wow, that's fabulous. I mean, even though there were more limited programs before this fully SA passed, it seems like, you were able to find the things that, kind of piece together the things that really helped to make a much better education solution for your son. Hopefully more families can kind of replicate that. Hey, Tori, so over, your time working on school choice, you've been able to get kind of little changes made here and there. And one of those was getting the program that Drew's family uses for his son. What are some of the changes that you've been able to get past, and what will this new school choice bill do?
All right. So the first one was the Individualized Education Accounts. And so that was for a limited number of special needs scholarships, but it was very limited in scope when we first passed it. Autism wasn't included. And as we know now, so many students are struggling with that. And so one of the things we did was we added autism to the list of things that it could be used for. Also, we added dyslexia. Then we passed the failing schools education savings account in 2019. It got held up in court, but it passed for Davidson County, Shelby County initially. Hamilton County got added into it. And then last year, we were really close, but the House, the Senate, and the governor, no one could agree to the final language of the bill. And there was a lot of things in there that were beyond just the school choice legislation. It was bonuses for teachers, a bunch of different things. And so that bill kind of fizzled and fell apart at the very end of session last year. We went through the political cycle and made sure that we had an aligned policy majority going into this year. And so this bill, like I said, 20,000 scholarships, roughly $7,000 a piece. The rollout will be happening like in the next couple of weeks. So they're already taking applications because we passed it in a special session. It will be available for the very next school year. So starting in August, the 25-26 school year, it'll be available. So it's got a combination of all three of those. So you can qualify under the Individualized Education Accounts, the original ESA, or now the Education Freedom Accounts. And so we think that this is just one way that's going to give families across the state more options and more access that they wouldn't have had otherwise. We also did some work on open enrollment, which is public school choice. That was specifically something that I worked on for my daughter. I found out when she was going to high school, she was zoned for the lowest performing or failing high school in our school district. And I wanted her to go to a new school that had all of these additional dual enrollment classes and didn't have the same problems that our school that she was zoned for had. And so when I went to fill out the zone exemption, we had an open enrollment policy in the state before that. But I found out they weren't granting any zone exemptions from the failing school because they thought too many parents would take their kids out of the failing school. And that is really what lit the fire in me that's just not right. It's just not right to say, hey, we know we have a school that's really underperforming, but how we're going to solve this is making sure that we put more kids in and don't let anyone leave. So that is part of the reason why we work so diligently through the years. And now we have a really robust open enrollment policy in the state of Tennessee where they have to report the number of open seats by grade and have to allow kids to freely transfer within the same district. And it was just a small starting point of where we should have been all along.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it seems like, you guys kind of led up, took steps to really taking this big step to pass CSA. That's really exciting. So, Drew, my understanding is that you went and testified at the legislature on behalf of the ESA. Why was that important for you? And, what did you share with the committee?
Yeah, I really wanted to use my voice to represent a lot of other parents like me who, we love the city that we're in. We love the state of Tennessee. But we also want to be able to have the ability as parents to decide what we believe is best for our kids. And so to speak at that hearing was huge. I got to share the same testimony that I'm giving to you guys here today. And kind of just showing that, for me right now as a parent, I'm wrestling with the idea of, oh my gosh, so my daughter does not have a disability, but we're stuck with the same situation. A lot of the local schools that we're zoned for just doesn't seem like it would be a right fit for her. We don't feel comfortable with her attending those schools. And so we could really utilize this bill to help offset the cost of tuition for private education. We just don't like the idea of having to take each of our kids who are just 2 years apart to two separate schools. And in a lot of cases, some of the schools that would be good as a public school, it's at least a 30-minute commute from where we live. So that presents a really big challenge for my wife and I as two, self-employed, middle-class income families. We certainly don't have all the money for private tuition, but we really love what we're seeing from private schools and how they're able to educate our kids. So that was really important for me to speak at that hearing, and I'm glad I was able to use my voice.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, Tori. So, I imagine there are other people who testified on behalf of the bill. What were some of their stories?
So Betsy Henderson comes to mind. She is a Knoxville County or City School Board member. And so she was testifying there as a parent, not a school board member, and was talking about she had the similar situation where she had one child where the public school was going to be just fine for her, right? Or just fine for her student. But she had another child that they just weren't having their needs met, and she was looking for better options. She gave a great, compelling testimony. There was a number of Walter Banks with American Federation for Children. He also testified. He's got a great story. He comes from Ohio, and what a different school choice has made in his life. And of course, my personal story of, I went to a failing Nashville public high school, and I immediately fell into the wrong crowd. And my mom wanted desperately to get me away from the people I was running around with and making all the bad decisions that I was making at that point in my life. And she would have given anything if she would have had access, a lifeline that she could have tapped to just like pull me out of one situation and send me somewhere else. But unfortunately, that was not the case for me. And that was not the case for so many of the folks that I did manage to graduate high school with. One of the few people that's felony free and I can still vote. So, it's nice for me, but it's unfortunate how many people the system chewed up and spit out that I grew up with. So, we've come a long way in Tennessee, and I'm an overcomer. I'm a survivor, and I'm glad that there's another generation of Tennesseans that will be too.
Yeah, I'm always, one of the reasons I love the education issues, education freedom issues, and we're seeing just a huge wave wash through the country over the last 3-4 years with education savings accounts and tax credits passing, and just really the empowerment of families to make the best decision for their kids. And it's just so exciting because everyone has their own story. They're not cookie cutter, but each kid's life is so precious and important. It's the sad thing is the flip side when you get kids trapped without education options in failing schools. It's like, that whole opportunity passes them by, and it's so tragic and just breaks my heart. So that's one of the reasons I feel a lot of passion for this issue is that, there's students who, that window kind of passes them by and they don't get to take advantage. But like in my state where I live in Illinois, whereas, when you can empower parents to make some of the best decisions for their kids, you unlock, that potential. And it's so cool to, see the way that it's transformed so many lives. It's just so inspiring.
Yeah, parents absolutely know their kids best, and they know what's best for their kids. And they're always going to make a decision that's going to be better for their individual child than some government bureaucrat who's never met them and doesn't know them and doesn't know what they're struggling with. I mean, there's only so much you can do when you're with public education, especially. It's not very individualized, right? You're teaching to the average, and you're expecting that every kid is average. And if you've got an average kid, they're probably going to be just fine. But if they're exceptional on either end of the scale, they're not going to have their needs met.
Yeah. So, Tori, you kind of talked a little bit about it, but over the years, Tennessee lawmakers have really changed their mind on school choice. What do you think kind of led to that change and, helped with that evolution for the lawmakers?
1000% COVID. We saw a prime example is the Speaker of the House, who was always a strong supporter of public school, but was very kind of standoffish towards the school choice movement. And when we went through COVID and saw the schools shut down, and parents saw in a lot of cases what their kids were being taught or how they were being taught, it opened so many parents' eyes, and it definitely opened lawmakers' eyes. And that is where we saw a definitive shift from, because yes, we were able to pass a very limited school choice bill in 2019, but after 2020, that's where you really saw a flip, especially among these rural Republican legislators who, frankly, let's face it, the schools are the biggest employers in their districts. So the teachers union could come in and strong arm them pretty easily. And it really took the parents standing up and saying, this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable that this is the level of service that I'm receiving. And it's unacceptable that you as my official, my lawmakers are not going to do anything about it. And so that is where we really saw a shift from the lawmakers that were very standoffish to even becoming, as now our House Speaker, Cameron Sexton, one of the biggest supporters of school choice.
Well, Drew, you're kind of part of that movement. You're kind of the face and voice on that. Kind of bottom line at the end of the day, and you've spoken to this a little bit, but how will the new program help your family?
That's going to help us out tremendously financially. Nashville's not getting any cheaper. Home values continue to rise, taxes continue to go up, cost of food, inflation, everything seems to be going up right now in our society. And being able to have some help to go towards something that is so important to every parent, which is their child's education, is huge. So we definitely intend to utilize this new Education Freedom Act to help my daughter attend the school of our choice that we believe is best for her. And we're really looking forward to seeing how this is going to help other families in our community, in our neighborhood. A lot of other parents, we live with a ton of other parents on our street, and they're having to wrestle with the same questions. We don't feel confident about some of the public schools and how they've been operating with the COVID, when COVID happened 5 years ago, and even now with like the higher we go in grades, the schools just don't seem to be getting better in the public education. So unless that starts to change anytime soon, we plan to utilize this bill for the unforeseeable future.
Well, I'll tell you, like I mentioned, I live in Illinois, outside of Chicago, and it seems like every month I hear of a friend or colleague or family member who's moved down to Tennessee. You've probably met a lot of them. I mean, there's some great stuff going on in Tennessee. Tori, maybe you want to take a moment just to brag on just holistically, like what kind of great stuff's going on in the volunteer state.
Well, first off, we are an income tax-free state. We have no income tax. We don't even have to file a state income tax. But being a native Nashvilleian, I would tell people we're full. Don't come to Nashville. Go somewhere else in Tennessee. Don't come to Nashville. So income tax free, we've got a great business climate. We'll be working on the reins, basically a Tennessee Doge in the next year. We've had a really aligned legislature and governor, so we've been able to get some great criminal justice reforms done. But I mean, really, just like we set forth with this idea that we want Tennessee to be the best place to live, work, retire, raise a family, start a business in the entire nation. And our state's really just been knocking it out of the park on all of those fronts. So a good tax structure, that's always a wonderful thing. And then even for Team Tennessee, right now, I know this sounds crazy to people in other states, we are engaging for a constitutional amendment to ban a statewide property tax. So right now, property taxes are paid at the local level, but we are within an inch of putting that on the ballot to ban a statewide property tax and protect future generations of Tennesseans from overtaxation.
That's amazing. As someone who lives, who pays incredibly high property taxes, that's music to my ears. Well, I'm so appreciative for the two of you coming on and kind of sharing the story of Tennessee and particularly around education empowerment. And Drew, I hope that this pays such great dividends. I'm so excited to hear about like how you guys really battled to try to figure out what works best for your son and now your daughter. And that's just heartening. I hope that so many other parents now can take advantage of those choices and kind of realize the same success.
We're spreading the word everywhere we go about this, and we're really excited about it. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, well, Drew, Tori, thanks so much. It's always great to talk with you.
You as well.
Yeah, so folks, everyone's different, and a one-size-fits-all solution doesn't work when it comes to students. For some, public schools meet the needs of students, but for others, they need something more tailored to how they learn, and they should be able to have that opportunity. So luckily, students in Texas now have that, thanks to the hard work of so many people there, including Tori and Drew. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe our channel, as well as following us on social media. Always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.